Hey everyone, welcome back. This is episode 9 of CNY Conversations. I am Jason Klink, your host. And with me today is Melissa Murphy. Melissa is the founder and CEO of Aging Life. She's founder and CEO, and I'm reading this if you can't tell. So this is probably the only time in the podcast I read anything. Aging Life Care Manager, certified dementia practitioner, certified care manager, and member of Profound Mastermind Group here in upstate New York. Melissa has 10 years of experience in the aging field, specifically in the areas of care management, housing, dementia care, and care consulting. She has several certifications and degrees, and she was recently, just last year in 2022, the recipient of the CNY Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for 2021. Melissa, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for doing this. It's wonderful. Happy to be here.
Outstanding. So Melissa had reached out to me based on a lot of the work that she does, and we're connected through. And it seems like a lot of my guests are connected through the Facebook group that we all belong to. But Melissa is very busy with her work. She's very busy with her family, and she has 2 little ones and one on the way. When's your due date?
I'm actually due July 3rd, which is about 9 days away. I should be counting, but hey, we could have the first baby on your podcast, right?
Listen, I went almost 30 years in the fire service, not delivering a child that wasn't mine. So I'd like to keep that record.
Well, you're not close enough to help me. So
yours. Yeah. Then I'd have to refer back to my 911 years and then pretend like I'm teaching you instructing you over the phone.
Yeah. I'm right across from the Swan Pond, which has been really bittersweet lately.
Oh yes, the Swan Pond and the swans.
Yeah,
insane.
I'm located right now.
So, Melissa, you work with the aging community here in Central New York, and it just reminded me of a car because I was just at lunch with my father, who's in his late 70s, and I was kind of not joking with him about, hey, life expectancy with modern medicine is like 85, 86 years old. And he's like, I'll be lucky if I get to next year. You got to be really healthy to get that far. And I'm like, oh boy. So, in your line of work, what are some of the most difficult things today, even given the financial situation in the world in general, and stuff going on locally? What's some of the biggest challenges for our aging community?
Good question. I'm sure you'll hear about the caregiver shortage. Everybody brings that up, whether it's in a community or in a residential community or actually in home care. There is definitely a shortage of caregivers among every other industry. It's a hard job. Yep. Lots of reasons why there is a staffing shortage. But aside from that, our biggest challenge is, you use your father as an example, folks wanting or not wanting to accept that they are aging, that there is a lot that can be prevented or planned for if you are willing to address it and accept it. So unfortunately, we see families in a crisis most of the time, because that's when they do have to face whatever their needs are. So part of our mission is to try to educate folks, get out into the community, try to get ahead of those emergencies if they can be prevented. So that's definitely the biggest challenge, getting folks to accept that the aging is, we're all aging from the time we're born. We all have different circumstances and goals. So
I guess I like to remind myself I'm not 25 anymore. No, not 25 anymore. I have found through my years in public safety that a lot of the times the aging community has a difficult time with kind of relinquishing some of their independence. That they have to rely on people, rely on family more, rely on caregivers more, rely on whatever the system more. And it seems like the more they lose a little bit of independence, the more they feel like they lose a little bit of themselves. Is that kind of accurate?
It's completely accurate. So we're always trying to come from the angle of the more that you do face the reality and try to put plans in place, the more control you actually have. So avoiding planning for needs. And of course, there's things that you're not going to know they're going to happen, but there are things that are very common. I'll tell you what's not common: living to be 95, passing peacefully in your sleep, without ever needing any medical intervention. Your family situation's perfect. Your financial situation's perfect. Your legal situation's perfect. That just doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The more planning, preparing you do, the more control and independence you are more likely to have, is the way we're looking at it and approaching. But
yeah, no, it's that. Yeah. And it's like, if you look at, and I talk about all the time, especially in a lot of the stuff that I do about the generational shift, and how like the mindset and upbringing for the baby boomers is night and day different than Gen Z or even millennials. And the baby boomers were all about, working 30 or 40 years to have a good salary or a decent salary, to hopefully have a decent pension when they retired, and hopefully they lived long enough after retirement to enjoy that pension. And it was, just almost like, keep everything centralized, put it in a box. And I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost concerning how, when our aging community gets to that point of being in the aging community, that they're really not prepared. They're not prepared what the later stages of life might have, between medical expenses and family and friends dying off around them. They're almost not. It's tough to get them to be prepared for just in case.
No, absolutely. And they're also a generation that, doesn't like to talk about certain things like mental health. They do want to have that the inheritance to hand down to their children, I see lots of times, which is also preventing them from getting the care that they may need and that they've earned. So yeah, there's all sorts of psychology and generational barriers. So the more that we talk about it, and one of our taglines in our company is "The conversation starts here." So, even our generation talking about it more will make it easier to speak with our family members, hopefully.
Well, that's a good segue. So talk about your business a little bit. You had told me that you're 3 years in with your business. Why don't you give everybody kind of that synopsis, 360-degree view of what your business is about?
Sure. So I started working in the aging field actually by accident. It was a marketing job.
Oh, wow.
For a senior living community. And I immediately was just taken aback. I knew that the company, the role was not for me by any means, but the field itself was. So I loved the community. I loved the residents. I loved working with the families. So I switched companies and went back to continue my education in gerontology and dementia, which I'm still continuing. I'll probably never stop pursuing different degrees in aging, in both policy and different neurological disorders, which is something we see a lot, and it's really hard to get a diagnosis. But back to how I started the business, so I was working in a community still and meeting with families time and time again, realizing that they were very unprepared, very uneducated on the options for aging needs, whether it was, should I keep my mom at home or should she move to a community, and all the other options. And I wanted to keep telling them, okay, well, let's try this day center, or there's this veterans program you could look into. And that wasn't my job at the time to tell them about everything. It was to help move people into that one specific community, right?
Yep.
So I did transition into care management. Aging life care management is actually the technical term for our field through what's called the Aging Life Care Association. And so I was doing that. And then in 2020. You know, everybody's got a COVID story.
Oh yeah. So I started my first podcast was a COVID story.
Oh yeah. All goes back to COVID. So as you can imagine, working with seniors during that time, it was like, whoa, now we had challenges, and now we have all sorts of additional challenges.
Right.
Whether it's you know, people being isolated in their community or in the nursing home, you know, you hear all those stories that were just horrific. And so just finding new creative ways to help these folks during that time. So I knew that I wanted to be more impactful on a larger scale. So I left the company I was at and started Aging Advocates 3 years ago next month.
That's outstanding. What a great story.
Thank you.
Now, as far as what's the mission of the business? You know, what does the day-to-day operations look like?
Yeah. So it ranges. Our mission is really to empower folks to age how they want to and to educate them on the options, mostly here locally in Central New York. So whether it's a family calling us in a crisis, they have a loved one that's in the hospital maybe and they need a discharge plan safely home, or they're already living at home and maybe they're showing signs of dementia, there's some safety concerns. I'm sure you're in your previous field. I'm sure you saw that, especially folks that maybe are wandering, getting lost. So we get a lot of those calls, and then we can either come right in and help with the crisis, intervene, get things stabilized, or if it's not a crisis, we help the family look at the whole picture. So we will assess their financial situation, their family dynamic, their living, take into account all of their medical needs, and then help put together plans, whether their goal is to remain in the home or to move to an appropriate living setting, or most people don't know, right? So they want us to come in, look at the whole picture, and help figure out what are the best options for their specific situation, which is so fun because, you know, every case is so unique. So there's never a dull moment, and it's very rewarding to try to find
and it's interesting that you position it that way, and it's a very positive outlook, especially dealing with dementia patients, which is very much an ugly disease. I mean, at the end of it, it's pretty debilitating. It's pretty sad for the family. It's you know, it's one of those things that you don't want. It's difficult being the child of somebody that could be elderly, that has dementia or Alzheimer's, and now they're just kind of, they're almost childlike, and they require so much care. Do you do a lot of work with the families to prepare them for how this, you know, proceeds through?
Absolutely. So we are big advocates for actually trying to figure out, if possible, what type of dementia they have, because they do all progress differently. So it's really important, if we're going to help advise the family on the best care options, but B, support them, right? So get them set up with different types of training and emotional support. So if we can first try to identify if it's Alzheimer's disease versus vascular dementia, there's several others, and they do present very differently, and it's important that if we can figure that out, then we can best help support the family. So yes, we do a lot with dementia education and support. And you're right, it can be extremely sad, but if we can help that family get through those challenges, it is.
Yeah, I'm sure. And you know, I've seen kind of the rough parts of those throughout my years, and people having to work with a family member that may be a little bit debilitated by dementia or Alzheimer's. Kind of flip the script a little bit, but dealing with the aging community, do you do anything with like elderly abuse or elderly abuse prevention?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we see that quite, I mean, I don't say regularly, but it's more prevalent than we want it to be, for sure. I sat in a court case a couple days ago where there was actually abuse coming from two angles. One was a partner or a friend of the client was preventing him from receiving proper medical care, keeping him isolated. So that form of abuse. And then there was a caregiver who was financially exploiting him. Oh. So we see both of those regularly, and unfortunately, sometimes it's family members themselves. So yeah, we do unfortunately come across that, and
right.
So it's good that we can identify certain red flags and make referrals to adult protective when necessary, or sometimes it's just a matter of intervening and removing them from whatever abuse is occurring.
Now, I'm assuming that you work, hand in hand with like adult protective?
Yeah, so I just mentioned adult protective we would refer to them absolutely when necessary. Yes.
Yeah, my first run-in with elderly abuse was many, many years ago, and I was riding an ambulance, and we took an elderly person to the hospital that had it's kind of gruesome, but had a bed sore that was so bad that it ate the skin away all the way down to the bone.
Yeah.
Like nobody bothered to flip this person over at some point.
Yeah.
It's sad to see, especially when, like you said, there's such a caregiver shortage, and now there's caregivers that are trying to do so much more for way more than they should. I mean, way more patients than they should. I can see. Do you think that, in your opinion, is there a lack of quality facilities for our aging community around Central New York?
Good question. Lack of quality. I would say no. I think we do have some good quality facilities here. We do. Okay. And compared to outlying counties, we do have a very strong aging services community here. So so I would say no, there's not a lack of them. There's going to be challenges in any community. So we are always advising families, the more you can be present in that facility, the less likely, of abuse or neglect occurring. But yeah, they're all going to have their challenges. So part of our initial, we call it our advocacy analysis, right? So we're coming in, looking at the whole picture, and it's going to be weighing the pros and cons. So for example, somebody who is extremely isolated and lonely, and they used to be very social and active and engaged, that person may truly benefit from a community setting versus somebody who's been a loner their whole life. They don't mind being alone, and they're safe in their home. We're not going to try to move them. So again, looking at what's the best case for that individual.
So now that we kind of covered the not so great part of it, what's some of the biggest successes you've had with your company and working with the aging community?
Oh, our biggest successes. Oh gosh,
put you on the spot.
They're so unique. Anytime a family member says, "Oh gosh, I wish I found you sooner,"
I'm sure
it's always a good indicator that we're doing the right thing, right?
Yep.
But most of the cases that I know that were the most impactful are the ones where we're not getting a thank you, because it's a client themselves who maybe does not have family. They are on their own. For example, somebody that may have a type of dementia, and they have some challenges in their day-to-day behavior that has made it hard for help to come in. Our team is very creative, very experienced in dealing with those types of challenges. So being able to keep somebody in their home, when every other agency in the county has quit on them, and their neighbors won't talk to them anymore, and their friends won't talk to them anymore, and their children haven't spoken to them in years. So when we can help those folks, which we have done regularly, that's a huge victory in our opinion.
Oh, that's awesome. What kind of educational content does your group push out or produce for people that are looking to get more educated on the work and caregiving of the aging community?
Oh, good question. So our education for the community, gosh, it depends. So we we've been doing presentations more geared towards the adult children of the aging population, and the importance of getting their documents in order. Yeah, we're huge proponents of that. So making sure that you have a healthcare proxy in place, a power of attorney, and any other legal work. And not to say that everybody has to have, you know, a trust or anything like that, but to at least understand your financial picture, how Medicaid may come into play, what Medicare actually covers. So the difference between Medicaid and Medicare. I can't tell you how many people think, oh, I've got Medicare now. I'll be able to get caregivers to come in and help me stay at home. When unfortunately that's not how that's not what Medicare covers.
Right.
So a lot of education on having documents in order and understanding what the services available here are and what the cost of care is, what the cost to stay home is, what the cost to move into a residential facility, and everything in between. So a lot of education on that for the community. And then we also do a lot of education for professionals. So financial advisors, estate planning attorneys, we're always working with those folks because in a perfect world, the three of us, or four of us, if you add the tax professional, we should all be collaborating with the family to make sure that their plans are in place legally, financially, and then, you know, we come in with the real life, what are the options for those services and how to have the conversations.
Awesome. That's great stuff. Are you involved in, or is your group involved in a residential placement for your clients?
Oh, yes. So again, we'll weigh, do they want to stay home? Are they able to stay home? Whether it's, you know, is their house accessible? Is there dementia? Is there going to be enough supervision to keep them at home safely? And if that's not an option to remain at home, we do help the family figure out, hey, what level of care do they need? You know, so either assisted living or memory care or nursing home. We'll help identify that, and then we educate the family on what communities we think might be the best fit for their specific situation and their finances. We can also speak to which communities have availability, and because we're in and out of them all of the time, truly regularly, we dedicate nearly half of our time to being out in the community and meeting with providers and touring communities. So we can speak to what is their current staffing like. So there may be a community that was your neighbor's, you know, favorite nursing home for 30 years, but right now they're in a complete staffing crisis, and we're going to say, hey, maybe we wait a couple months and revisit this community because they are going through an administration overhaul. And that happens a lot. So we could speak to, you know, real expectations of these places, honestly, to the family. Which brings me to another quick point I want to make is that we are paid directly by the family. So they know we are always working in their best interest. So we do not take any referral fees or kickbacks from any services or communities that we would be recommending.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, you know, and that just, it's such a positive outlet. It's such a positive outlet for, you know, our aging community to get the care that they need, to get the living conditions that they need, to get their preparations in order, to support the family. It's really a holistic effort, right?
You got it.
That's awesome. One other thing, and I think I always found that there was confusion between people understanding what senior apartments were, assisted living, and nursing homes.
Yeah.
Can you dive into that a little bit?
Sure. So you've got your regular senior apartment. That's pretty self-explanatory. Then an independent living community is going to be like a senior apartment, but they're going to have a central community space and usually providing meals, an activity program, maybe some transportation or other amenities like that. But they're not providing actual care. At an assisted living level, they are providing the care. So there's caregivers that are coming in to help with medications, with showering, with using the bathroom, that sort of thing. And then you've got memory care at the assisted living level, which is important. That's for those that have a dementia or a cognitive impairment that is putting them at risk of maybe wandering out of the community. They need more oversight, and the community is secured and alarmed. So a lot more oversight there. But those folks don't necessarily need a nursing home, right? Because they're walking around, they're very active.
Right.
Then you've got your nursing home level, which is going to be, those that either are not able to walk anymore, they need total care around the clock, or their dementia has progressed to the point that they're no longer safe in a regular assisted living memory care.
Gotcha. Good to know. And I thought of that just because I think that there is some confusion, and it goes back to that level of independence. What level of independence do we want our parents and grandparents to have, depending on what stage of life that they're in. I can remember my wife's grandfather was, in his 80s, and he was driving around this old beat up pickup truck. I mean, you needed a tetanus shot just looking at it. But he loved that truck. Loved to get around and putter around, do his own thing. And he got to the point where he couldn't see so well. And he really it was a danger to have him on the road. So, his daughters and his son took the truck off the road, told him, "Dad, you're not driving anymore." And you could just see it kind of deflate him a little bit, but he still had a little bit of life because he had his independent apartment. He was able to come and go as he wanted to, and he loved living there. It's one of those things I think you got to prepare yourself for if you're family or if you're the part of the aging community. It's really just a circle of life. We'll talk about that. It's interesting. Oh, not interesting, but it's I'm trying to think of the right word. It's definitely an eye-opening experience if it's something you have to go through.
It is eye-opening, and what I've found is that people that have gone through it, unfortunately, they don't want to relive it, so they're not talking about it.
No, okay.
Even though they have a story like yours that would be helpful for other people to hear, sometimes it's just too painful.
Yeah.
So one bit of advice that we do give in our presentations is to you can't control what your parents are doing, but you can control what you're doing, right? And so to outline what your personal wishes are. So if it does come time that your healthcare proxy or your children have to make a decision, if you have it very clearly spelled out in writing, it's going to help take some of that burden off of the family member when making really hard decisions.
Yeah, for sure. That's outstanding. And, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast today. I'm glad you volunteered. Such great information. And it's probably, not a conversation or information a lot of people have or hear or search out unless they have to. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they wanted to connect with you?
Oh gosh, all the ways.
All the ways.
We're very active on our social media page, so I highly recommend following us on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, because we're always sharing valuable information about the services here and about some of these difficult topics. So Aging Advocates CNY, also agingadvocatescny.com. You can go on our website or call us at 315-480-4770. We do offer a free consultation to anyone interested. We will at least point you in the right direction if you don't need to hire us. Make sure that you have some valuable information to take away.
Outstanding. That's great. And if you want to reach out to Melissa and you can't find the website for whatever reason, or can't find the Aging Advocate CNY on social, feel free to reach out with me. I'd be happy to connect you with Melissa at any point. Up till when you have that baby and maybe you get a little downtime in between.
The show must go on, though. We're a team of 10, and our clients will not know that I am missing. I assure you.
That's outstanding. Well, Melissa, again, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I appreciate you and taking the time to share this information with us. And best of luck with that new baby.
Thank you so much. Keep up the great work, Jason.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate anybody that's watching or listening. When the podcast is dropped, please, drop a comment. Let us know what you think of the episode. Maybe any real life stories that you have based on what we discussed today with Melissa. We'd love to hear that, or any information on future episodes you'd like to see. just trying to grow this small community around our community. And that's the purpose of this podcast. So with that, everybody take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.